Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are diving into one of the oldest, slipperiest, and most profound questions we can ask. Why did consciousness evolve?
That essential feeling of being me.
Exactly, that subjective experience. And for millennia, we've basically assumed the answer was tied exclusively to, the big, complex human brain.
Specifically our cerebral cortex, that layered structure we're so proud of.
Right. But the sources we've gathered today, they are absolutely fascinating because they challenge that entire deeply entrenched mammal-centric view.
They really do.
So our mission for this deep dive is to show you the evidence that's forcing science to completely redefine what the minimal requirements for subjective experience even are.
And the surprising stars of this story aren't primates. They're birds.
Our highly intelligent feathered friends. The research on corvids and parrots is just. It's revealing that nature found a totally different architectural blueprint to achieve the exact same kind of awareness we have.
Which implies consciousness is far more widespread and far more ancient than we ever gave it credit for.
Okay, let's unpack this. But first, we probably need to get on the same page about definitions. Consciousness is such a loaded term.
It really is. And scientifically, that's always been the foundational difficulty, what we call the other minds problem.
How do you know what another creature is feeling if you can't ask it?
Exactly. So for our purposes, let's define consciousness as awareness. Awareness of your internal states, feelings, anxieties, and awareness of external objects out in the world.
And crucially, science doesn't see it as just an on-off switch anymore, right? It's more of a spectrum.
That's the key. Our sources use a framework called the alarm model, which breaks awareness down into 3 hierarchical levels.
Okay, so what's level 1?
Level 1 is basic arousal. This is the most fundamental, purely about survival. Think of it as the brain's baseline alarm system: pain, hunger, distress.
So something most simple organisms would have.
Yes, and it relies on older brain systems, like the upper brain stem and the thalamus. You don't need a complex cortex for it. The animal feels pain, it flees, it survives, but it isn't, worrying about that predator coming back next Tuesday.
Right. That lack of future planning is the key. That takes us to level 2.
Level 2. General alertness. This is where we humans live most of our daily lives. It's about selective, goal-directed attention.
You're tuning out background noise to focus on a task. You're making immediate decisions based on sensory signals.
Exactly. And then you have the top tier, reflexive self-consciousness.
The classic, I think, therefore I am, metacognition.
Thinking about your own thoughts, or importantly, thinking about the thoughts of others. Its whole evolutionary purpose seems to be complex, long-term, future-directed planning.
It's kind of sobering that the sources really ground this whole discussion in pain. It seems like sentience is fundamentally linked to the capacity to feel suffering.
And consciousness is the complex tool that evolved to help us avoid that suffering long-term. It's a survival tool, not some philosophical luxury.
And that link is what really forced the scientific world to start questioning that old historical assumption.
The one that kept consciousness in a very exclusive club.
For centuries, right. The narrative was so clear. It belongs to humans, maybe some great apes, dolphins, whales, and that belief rested entirely on meeting that one specific structure.
The 6-layered cerebral cortex. The human model.
But that assumption took a huge public hit in 2012.
The Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness, yes. That was a major turning point.
It was a consensus across neuroscientists, biologists, all confirming that many non-human animals, including mammals and birds, have the neural basis for consciousness.
So the question then becomes, why were birds overlooked for so long? I mean, their intelligence was obvious to anyone who watched them.
It was pure anatomical bias, wasn't it? Their brains just look different.
Completely different. They don't have that big layered cortex. So the assumption was, well, they must function differently. They can't possibly be self-aware in the same way.
But you can't ignore the behavior. You look at a crow, a raven, a magpie, tool use, problem solving. They're getting the same results as a chimpanzee, but with a brain the size of a walnut.
Which forced neuroscientists to ask a better question. Not what do they lack, but how are they doing it?
And that's where we get to the real breakthrough.
Right. And here's the nugget of knowledge for you.
Right.
The key isn't brain size or layers. It's neuronal density.
Neuronal density. I love that. It's such a simple way to put it.
Think of it like this. A mammal's brain might be a sprawling country estate, but a bird's brain is a densely packed supercomputer microchip. They have 2 to 4 times the neuronal density of a typical mammal.
So they're just incredibly efficient. Maximum processing power in a tiny space.
Which brings us to the core concept here, convergent evolution.
One of the most beautiful ideas in biology.
It is. The sources are so clear on this. The advanced cognition in birds comes from a completely different architectural blueprint. Nature found two different roads to get to the same destination.
So the bird brain has its own version of a cortex.
Functionally, yes. It's called the avian pallium. It handles planning, learning, all the higher cognitive stuff.
Yeah.
And the ultimate lesson from this is that it's all about how the circuits are wired. Functionality trumps form.
Okay, so if the structures are so different, how did scientists first prove that birds could have that top-tier reflexive self-consciousness? They had to rely purely on behavior, right?
Entirely on behavior. And the classic test for self-recognition is, of course,
The mirror test.
the mirror test, the benchmark. You put a dot on an animal where they can only see it in a mirror. If they see the reflection and try to touch the dot on their own body, we assume they know that's me.
Apes, elephants, dolphins passed, and the first non-mammals to just smash that test.
We're the magpies. A huge moment. It proved that six-layered cortex wasn't the price of admission.
But there's a big caveat with that test, isn't there?
A huge one. Not passing doesn't mean you lack self-awareness. It might just mean the test is wrong for your species. A dog's world is smell, not sight. Why would it care about a dot in a mirror?
So scientists had to get creative. They adapted the tests. What about pigeons?
Pigeons. Not exactly what you think of as a deep thinker. But you can train them to use a mirror to find objects behind them. And they can recognize the link between their own movements and what they see on a video screen. That implies a sense of self. I am causing that.
I love the rooster test. That one's brilliant.
It's so clever.
Huh?
A rooster will sound an alarm call if it sees a predator or another rival rooster. It's an immediate, powerful instinct.
But when it sees its own reflection...
And please silence.
Yeah.
It knows the difference between a threat and that's just me. That's discrimination. That
Yeah.
implies self-awareness.
Okay, but this next finding, this is where things get really wild. We have to talk about the minimal requirements for this. Our sources point to a really strange study from 2015 on ants.
I remember this one. It's mind-bending. They put a tiny blue dot on an ant's face. When that ant saw itself in a mirror,
It started frantically trying to clean the dot off its own face.
which suggests self-recognition, right?
Yeah.
But the context is everything. Why was it so desperate?
Because the other ants in the colony started treating it like an outsider. They got aggressive.
Exactly. So the ant wasn't being vain. It was trying to fit back into a being attacked.
Yeah.
The level of social cognition needed for that. To recognize, I have this mark, and this mark is causing me to be targeted in an insect.
Yeah.
It just complicates the whole picture.
So moving from recognition back to our birds, what about that highest level? What's the evidence for them planning for the future?
Oh, the evidence is overwhelming. New Caledonian crows are famous for it. They use sticks as tools, but if a stick isn't working, they will literally craft a hook to fish food out of a crevice.
That's multi-step planning. That's engineering.
It is. And then you have jays. They hide food for later. But they also make complex plans about where to hide it based on whether they think another bird is watching them.
So they're thinking about what another bird is thinking.
It's a clear demonstration of what we call theory of mind.
Yeah.
They are actively predicting a rival's future behavior. That is high-level, future-directed planning.
Okay, so we've got all this complex cognition. Neuroscientists had to find where in the bird brain this was happening. Where's their version of our prefrontal cortex?
They found it. The structure is called the nidopallium cotilateral, or NCL for short.
The NCL.
The NCL is functionally the bird's prefrontal cortex.
Mhm.
It handles all those critical executive functions: planning, decision-making, impulse control.
And we have direct evidence of this.
Oh, yeah. Studies where they trained crows on really difficult tasks show that the conscious experience, the aha moment of solving the problem, lit up the NCL.
Mm.
The hardware is different, but the high-level software is functionally identical.
Wow. And this anatomical proof lets us connect everything back to the big modern theories of what consciousness actually is.
Exactly how the information is processed. The first one is the global neuronal workspace theory.
Which is like the brain's internal public announcement system.
That's a great way to put it. Important information gets selected, amplified, and broadcast to all the other brain regions so everyone's on the same page. Consciousness is that broadcast.
Okay. Then there's the recurrent processing theory.
That one's less about broadcasting and more about confirmation loops. A signal goes from region A to B, and B sends a confirmation back to A over and over. That constant feedback loop is what creates the lasting, subjective feeling.
And the third one is the most mathematical one.
The integrated information theory, or IIT, it basically says Consciousness is a measure of a system's ability to integrate diverse information into one cohesive picture. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
And the bird research shows they're doing all of this.
They seem to be, yes. Their brains are performing the complex information integration described by all these models.
So what does this all mean? What's the so what of this research?
The source material is unequivocal. This fundamentally changes our understanding of the evolution of mind. Consciousness isn't some recent, uniquely primate invention. It's widespread, and it is ancient.
How ancient?
Well, the split between the mammalian and avian lines happened over 300 million years ago. This suggests the foundations of consciousness were being laid down even before that.
Which means it must be a profound evolutionary advantage.
Absolutely. It gives you advanced learning, long-term planning, essential survival strategies. Nature just found two different ways to build it. The layered cortex and the dense avian pallium. Same result, different blueprints.
That idea of convergent evolution, it's really the ultimate takeaway here. It's about the wiring and the pathways, not the specific physical parts we happen to have.
And we've only just scratched the surface. We're finally getting a real biological handle on consciousness, thanks to our feathered friends. But the mystery of the threshold remains.
To help solve that, I saw that future research is planning to use objective metrics like the Perturbational Complexity Index, or PCI.
Yes, to try and get an actual number, a measure of their information processing capacity, not just a behavior.
And that raises a really important, provocative question for you, the listener, to think about.
It does. Is consciousness a multi-level process, like the alarm model suggests, where you can have just a little bit of it? Or is there some absolute minimal requirement that acts like a simple on-off switch?
And if we've seen self-recognition in an ant trying to fit in with its colony, where truly does the minimal requirement for consciousness lie in the animal kingdom? That is the fascinating biological horizon we'll leave you to explore.
Stay curious. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.